Good afternoon, champions. My name is Dylan, and I am coming to you live from Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, in the Codename Entertainment Lime Green streaming closet. That I mean, it looks like there's a background here, but like the wall's like right there. So first things first, I'd like to give my undying appreciation to the folks over at Dungeons and Dragons for, well, everything. We would not be here on this channel with this game without them. So thank you all. And I would also like to acknowledge the wonderful helping hands who make streaming to you all such an easy task and such a joy each week. Thanks to the very stoic and British Clive Gorman, the brilliant Erica Kramer, the overworked and behind schedule Chris Dupuy, and of course the amazing Lauren Obo Crazy Urban, who I can see in chat right now. So thank you all for your help, and welcome to our show, and thank you for being here. So before we get into the stream code and everything else that's going on, we have a bit of unfinished business from last week. We have these not showing up as green because of the chroma keying. Tomb of Annihilation dice bags, complete with a basic set of, I think, 7 or 8 dice, including a D20 that has the wonderful Dungeons and Dragons ampersand logo on it. We have 7 winners to announce, so I don't know if you are all in chat, and we will be following up with people afterwards. But the winners that we have are a Christian G from the United Kingdom, a Lance H from the United States of America, a Mikhail A from Pakistan, a David M from the USA, Duoem from the Netherlands, Sabarno S from the USA, and the .dk from Denmark. I didn't give out last names because I'm just not going to give out too much information, but we have our 7 winners. I believe we have all the information we need from you in order to send these out, and they should be mailing out tomorrow, actually, the 25th. So I have no idea how long they're going to take to get to you because they're little bags of dice, but who knows? I mean, shipping's weird sometimes, right? So congratulations to you all. And for this week, we have something else. We were hoping to give these away during the holiday, but they had not arrived yet. But they have now. So we have a new giveaway. And it is for, sorry, I'm trying to get these away to like fan it in a way that I can kind of show it off. These copies of issue 4 of IDW's Evil at Baldur's Gate, signed by Jim Zub himself, across a few of the different variant covers. This is the issue focused on Neris Cathon, who, you know, joined our game in December. And, you know, Jim and I talked about at length twice now. So now we have these, and now we can give them away. So you can enter for your chance to win one of these copies, and we will send this signed Evil at Baldur's Gate copy to you. It's a pretty awesome issue in terms of the characterization of Neris and, like, you know, her journey at this point. It's cool. Yeah. I don't know what else to say about it. So yeah, you can get one of these or one of the other covers. You just have to sign up. And on that note, what else? For today's show, we were going to be bringing back another one of our co-founders this week, David Whitaker, the man who will likely be tackling the vast majority of the quality of life related just stuff for the game this year, including the things that Justin has talked about doing that David may or may not approve. But if you have quality of life related questions, requests, suggestions, desires, what have you, or you have anything you want to ask about any of the front end facing interface programming, etc., the UI, David's your guy. So we will save up those questions for when David joins me in about 55 or so minutes. But from here, let's move on to the roadmap and to the game. So I have left this running for a little bit, just so that I wasn't in the first opening areas for everybody. I'm doing the Seeds of Deceit free play. I have I haven't done this formation before. I was just kind of playing around, putting together a warden formation yeah. And so there are familiars on all the champions, leveling them up, and then I have Juniper and Boo moving around the ultimate spar, just kind of randomly casting stuff so that it's not such a so that something's going on in the background. But yeah, I'm gonna leave that running, and then I'm gonna go into the roadmap that we had in this week's Q&A, because it's been gradually updating, and, like, you know, there's been some new news. And if you have any questions related to any of this, feel free to ask. I mean, can't necessarily answer everything, but I will endeavor to answer you where possible. We definitely focused most of our Q&A this past week on the core champions, which is to say the initial 12 champions that you start the game with that you don't have to do anything to unlock. So that's Brunner, Celeste, Naeli, Jarlaxle, Calliope, Ashara, Minsk, Delana, Makos, Tyrell, Jamila, and Archon the Cruel, in that order. So, as Justin mentioned on stream last week, we're planning on breaking up our champion balance update into several smaller but still large chunks over the course of this year. With the first one, we're aiming for the first quarter of this year to be done. So we're really hoping that we can, but that's obviously not a guarantee in the world of game design. The first one is focused on the core 12 champions. And so I put out the question to the subreddit Q&A, who are your favorite 3 core champions and why? And who are your bottom 3 / least favorite core champions and why? And the reason I asked it in that specific way is we want to get an idea of how players feel about the characters that they're using, like which champions they have in their formation. Things like, so-and-so's numbers being categorically better than somebody else's, or like that stuff's pretty obvious to us, and that's the kind of thing that we can see on a regular basis. What we'd really like to know is why do you prefer to use some champions over others? Like, some of them have arguably better benefits. Some of them have not been really playable at all. Sorry, Delana. I'll tell you what, I did put together a potential design for her that I think is awesome. And we'll see what Justin and Chris think. They might hate it. But we're hoping to give her the love and attention that she deserves as such an awesome character. Now what we did was, I put out the question and I went over everybody's responses. I read it. I tried to respond to everybody to thank them for their feedback, and I think at some point I probably stopped doing that, but I did continue to read what people were saying about them. In a lot of cases, it was kind of, we're more in sync than players might feel. Like, we're kind of on the same page about how we feel about a lot of the core 12 champions, but there were a few things that were maybe a bit surprising in terms of information. We figured it was a pretty safe assumption that Delana would be the least favorite champion, and she just narrowly wasn't. Jamila Jams has managed to surpass her as the champion that players like the least. So, it's not a whole surprise, but initially we were looking at, in terms of champions who we were pretty sure need just reworks, not just tweaks. We were looking at Delana and Jarlaxle and possibly Minsk. Not because we think Minsk sucks, because Minsk is, most players, when they first start the game, he's their best DPS. But he's quickly overshadowed and people move on, and it's Minsk, right? Like, Minsk and Boo need to be awesome, so we were kind of looking at them as possible reworks. But maybe Jamila needs one too. I mean, if players are that unhappy with her design, then maybe we need to consider that as well. I've been badgering both Justin and Chris with just pages of ideas about things that we could do with each one of them. So maybe some of them will work out, maybe they won't. But we are totally open to acknowledge that we can do some work on these champions. Now, unfortunately, what this does mean is that because we are focusing on the initial 12 core champions, Dritz to Erden and the rest of the companions of the hall are not included in this first pass. We see the core champions as kind of the foundation of the lineup, as well as they are the gateway champions when you first start playing the game, and so we need to make sure we have them better. They need to be awesome. And then the other champion sort of balance updates we're looking at. After that, one of them will be a year 1 champion balance update. So that will be all 17 event champions and all of the evergreen unlocks, which includes Dritz. kind of focused as a more major balancing update. Now, quite a few of the characters in those what is that, 20 I think total, if you include Azaka and Dritz and it's 19. So you know, we're kind of looking at that as a whole, but like there are fewer champions that need some major reworks, we feel, in that. Like there's some missed opportunities, some things that didn't work out. There are some characters that are going to get better for sure with upcoming releases, including Paulton Seppa from Dice Camera Action is going to be a champion that has an impact on Waffle Crew related formations. So that's not going to fix everything that doesn't quite hit the mark with Diath, for example, but it should help Strix, and Evelyn's already, pretty popular. So yeah, we definitely have a lot of stuff in the works. So one of the most interesting bits of information was how many players love Jarlaxle but don't like Jarlaxle as a champion, we feel the same way in that Jarlaxle felt different at the game's launch than he does now. And also, since the game's launch, Jarlaxle has received a bit of a rework in D&D in the sense that the Waterdeep Dragon Heist version of his character sheet has put together an insanely badass pirate rogue Jarlaxle, and so we want to do something that aligns more with that, with potential changes to him. So that's kind of how we're looking at that. What else do we have? What else do we go over in the Q&A? Splitting up the champion balance update. Yes. Campaign updates. So we wrapped up the storyline for the Tomb of Annihilation, hence the dice bag giveaway. We're not planning to add any more to the story for that campaign. You can consider that the story of it more or less complete, but we do have plans for additional tiers of variants across the whole campaign, culminating in an unlock of Dragonbait later this year. Not planned for Q1. All things can change, of course, but not planned for the first quarter. Much later on this year, and it'll be hard, but we're pretty excited about Dragonbait. I've been dropping more and more hints about which champions are coming up over the upcoming events, including a hint that was one hint and then it changed to a completely different one because the champion has changed which one we're releasing in that slot. Yeah, you can expect the formal announcement about which champion is coming next to the game following Cthulhu's Draub on Monday, once Midwinter has ended, and then that'll be the champion coming with Grand Revel. Fleet's Wake is still a little up in the air. It may be one of two different champions, depending on behind the scenes factors, basically. And then, after Fleet's Wake, that's late February into March, we'll have a Festival of Fools for the year 2 to close out sort of the first quarter of 2019's events. That would be Strix's event. And we're not ready to talk about which champion is going to join Strix, but we think players will be really happy. What else? It's just funny because it's like we go over so much stuff on a regular basis. I sometimes forget which things we've covered already. If you have any questions for me, feel free to ask. I have a few listed here already, so I'm just going to start diving into them. But if you have questions, comments, or feedback related to our UI, our front end design, anything like that, I'm going to hold those for when David gets here. So yeah, let's see. Jelizaveta. This game and Critical Role together got me into my first ever D&D campaign. Oh, right on. I would love to hear more about that. What are you playing? But I'm happy to hear that's helped you out. Garwar. Based on today's stream code, can we now refer to Regis as two chests? I suppose you could, if that's what you wanted to do. Anatol Belazar. So when is Idle Champions co-sponsor of Critical Role? We co-sponsored Critical Role last week in the lead into PAX South. We were hoping to just, get some more attention. It was a big deal for us. We haven't, it's certainly like one of our attempts to, I don't want to say bat above our weight, but we're smaller. It was a really big deal for us to be able to sponsor Critical Role last week. We were really happy to do it, and we were also really lucky to have such amazing friends at Toonhound Studios, Scott Kurtz and Corey Cassoni, and their colleague Stephen Love, who helped us put together the Binwin Critical Role spot last week, which was just a blast. They did such a good job, and they turned it around so fast. Nothing but love for those guys. But yeah, I don't know if we will do it again. I don't know if it's something that we're like I said, we're pretty small. I don't know if we could afford to, but we were very, very happy to do it, and nothing but great things to say about the people that we got to work with on their end. Professional crew of amazing people. Silisa, what answers did you find the most interesting from the Champion Balance Q&A? I think the biggest thing for me, just me personally, like Dylan's insight, not necessarily speaking for the company, looking at it, it's apparent to me that we can be doing more to better represent the legacy of some of the story lore-based champions that are in the game. Now, that isn't to say that isn't something that we didn't already know, but this Idle Champions being a video game, like, the meta kind of evolves to move around whichever champions are the most effective at any given time. Like, one of the reasons Warden is used is not because anybody has an attachment to Warden as a character, or at least it wasn't before Warden was conceived, but Jamila, while being the best DPS in the base 12 up until you get to the point where Archon's use of power can be used, or you can invest in a formation that uses Strix or Warden, but Jamila doesn't offer anything beyond that, whereas Warden does. At the same time, players have a really strong connection to some of these champions, right? Like Jarlaxle. Like, Jarlaxle received probably more individual feedback than almost any other champion out of our core 12. The consensus was like a lot of players use him when they can anyways, just because they like Jarlaxle as a character. But it's apparent that with the way the game has evolved, that Jarlaxle doesn't fit in, is not effective, and certainly does not represent just everything that Jarlaxle can do and has done in the history of all the novels he's made appearances in, and now the campaign setting in which he's an antagonist. So we would, we hear that. I mean, it was something that we were kind of already thinking, and it was nice to get that reaffirmed. But it's we want to, we just want to do a better job of representing that, and so it's something that's a work in progress. I'm trying to think of what else was really surprising. It was surprising that Jamila was less favored. People were less happy with Jamila than with Delena, probably because there are more niche scenarios where you end up using Delena, but there isn't really the same thing for Jamila. If you have Warden or Strix, you probably never use Jamila for any reason. So that was surprising. And then what was also surprising, maybe unsurprising, but surprising, was that Tyrell and Calliope categorically were overwhelmingly positive in terms of how people feel about them. Yeah, it's how do I describe it? It's like players recognize that, like, Calliope is amazing. Also, maybe her shields are too good. And it was nice to see that players also recognize that. Not just that they like Calliope because Calliope functions extremely well, but because, yeah, you know, Calliope's shield is too strong. Like, it makes non-tanks tanks. And same thing with Tyrell. Like, people love Tyrell, but like, they're like, his Moonbeam is a little bit balanced too high relative to Wild Shape, because it's so much better that you could have Tyrell in front and be a crappy tank with Moonbeam, and it still offers more to your party than having Tyrell in front as a bear. So, you know, it's nice to see that players are as aware of these not shortcomings, but like these you know, these aspects of the balance as we are, and so it was nice to read that as well. There's probably some more stuff that I found really interesting because I spent the afternoon yesterday putting together Tuesday, sorry, putting together a fairly lengthy kind of breakdown of everything that was said in the Q&A, and you know, players were messaging me on Discord, adding to it. There was another post in the Steam forums, adding to it, and so it's just kind of like making sure that we're not missing anything. And it was also really interesting that like, as much as people overwhelmingly love Archon, he's very difficult to use well, and he does require a lot in order to be effective. So, you know, he's not seen as immediately usable to somebody who, you know, perhaps like you haven't purchased or unlocked any champions yet and you get your way up there. You still don't really have a reason to use him, even though he's, you know, amazing. So it was really interesting to read about that as well. Lord Doctavius. Good afternoon. Just got into Idle Champions post-PAX South and followed the pop-up here. Excited to learn new things. Welcome, Lord Doctavius. We have some of our marquee, most like community leadery players in chat I can see right now. Mars2 is one of our community leaders. Garawar is one of our community leaders. Silisa is a community leader and one of our moderators, part of our mod team. If you have any questions, they do have answers. But also you can join us on the official Discord, which is at discord.gg/idlechampions. And yeah, lots of stuff. M. Caesar, Dylan, do you know if there's any plans to improve familiars assigned to ultimates to be more useful and efficient? Yes. So, it's not a immediate near future quality of life improvement, but as part of our improvements to the functionality of familiars, and, you know, as well as adding more familiars down the line, Justin mentioned this on last week. We will be changing the use of familiars and ultimates so that you can target individual ultimates with a familiar. So you can drop, you know, you can drop Boo on Makos ultimate and set up your Makos farm and not have any other ultimates getting cast or what have you. That is coming. I do not have an ETA on it, but it is coming. Hellstream, would it be possible to roll first-year event champion gear into gold chests? As they are no longer the focus of the event, it would allow for fewer used, lesser used champions to see the light of day. That's really unlikely, Hellstream. Yeah, that's really unlikely to happen. I will let David or Justin explain that better, because I don't have an eloquent answer prepared for you. But yeah, being a free-to-play game, we're pretty beholden to the design of our, you know, the transactional systems in the game. We can't just abandon them. It's you know, there's a reason that we create content at the pace that we do, and that we have the stuff that we do, and it's just, yeah, I really appreciate the idea behind it, and like, we do want to do more to allow players to earn equipment and gear up those event champions that you know, that they've earned through time gates or what have you. But rolling the equipment into gold chests isn't something we're looking at doing, especially considering we are going to be adding more evergreen champions down the line. So, you know, imagine what it would be like trying to gear characters for a new player who like unlocks several event champions, and like, it's just, yeah, it's a complicated thing. Legion 74, no chest code for console, no chest for console. So right now, the only way you can get a free chest on either Xbox One, PlayStation 4, or the tablet for Android or iPad versions of Idle Champions is to be signed up for the newsletter tied to your account, so that you automatically receive the weekend promo chests when they go out. The terms of use for those platforms, the licensing agreement, prevents us from just giving out codes for them, and it's a long story. Now, that being said, we have put in a proposal with Apple and Google and Microsoft and Sony to put in an alternative system for those platforms that would allow players to do something similar. I can't go into detail because we're not at a point where we're ready to share any of it, but it's the latest word on that is it's looking like it's going to go through, in which case we will be able to design that and implement it sooner rather than later. So thank you so much for your patience, console and tablet players. We're working to do right by you in this way, and it's coming. Hopefully soon, but it's coming. Pashiryu, how's the raffle for the Mimic? Raffle for a Mimic? I'm not sure I follow. This year's... are you thinking that we have raffles in chat? We don't. We have been taking a break from... raffle spamming our chat logs so that we can actually read what players are saying. And we've been doing giveaways. So this week's giveaway, I'm going to plug it again, is for one of these 5 signed issues of issue 4 of Evil at Baldur's Gate, the storyline focused on Neris Cathan. They're all signed by Jim Zub, the awesome Jim Zub, who you should totally follow on Twitter because he talks about a lot of interesting stuff in the creative world and in writing comics and so on. So if you want to enter that, there is a link posted in chat, both on Mixer and in Twitch, by Erica and Clive, just to sign up for it. And following feedback from last week, I don't think you need to have a Twitter account this time. I think there are alternative ways to sign up. So we hear you. We're trying to make it a little easier, but yeah. Let's see. Anathal Belazar. Will Archon's flamethrower achievement become available again eventually, or altered? I don't have a definitive answer for that. It's interesting because we also have like evergreen champions that don't have achievements yet that we want to put stuff in. Yeah. Anyways, I don't have an answer for you, Anathal Belazar. I'm trying to think if there's anything else related to it. I'm not stunning out too much. Yeah, I haven't heard anything related to that. I'm just going to make a note because maybe there's something that I can poke Justin about. But yeah, no news on character achievements right now. Elable, is it normal that only one champion makes almost 100% of my damage? I've only been playing for a couple weeks now, but Minsk is clearly my strongest champion and deals 90 to 99% of my damage. That is normal. With the way that the game scales in terms of damage and monster health and such, it's kind of inevitable that there will always eventually be just one damage to rule them all in terms of your party members. At earlier levels and in earlier completions, you can kind of split your buffing and DPS around so that you might have 2 or 3 DPS champions in your formation. But eventually, it's always going to kind of aim towards one. And like if I look at this window right now and I hold down the trigger, it's like Warden is doing 99% of my DPS because all buffs hit Warden, but not all buffs hit everybody else. So you kind of just, depending on which champions you have, you kind of just pick your most optimal DPS scenario, and that's what happens. You end up with one character doing the majority of your damage. It's just the way that the game is kind of built up. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, Elable. Let's see. Iswell69, how do you manage to have this UI? I'm playing on Steam and the UI is very different. Oh, okay, so it sounds like you're using the mouse and keyboard interface. So this is the gamepad UI. And now if you're playing this on Steam, you can go into your settings menu and there's a toggle for display in gamepad UI mode. And if you toggle it and check it, and you do have to have a gamepad plugged in order for this to work. Otherwise it won't load the game. But it'll close the game, and then the next time you load it, it'll have the different interface. So this is just the gamepad UI mode. And then I have flashing and lighting effects disabled, as well as screen shake, just because we've had players in the past who view our stream who have issues with flashing lights and other visual sensitivity. So I just want to keep it easier for them. So that's why there's a little less going on screen than there otherwise would be for my free play right now. Let's see. OG17. Are Regis changes waiting for a bigger Companions update? Surprising he kept his dead DPS item when they've been getting phased out. I mean, most characters have a DPS item. There's very few that don't. I kind of answered this earlier, but just to reiterate, the Companions of the Hall have been kind of lumped into a Year 1 champion update coming after the core champion update. So that's later this year. So if we make changes to Regis, it'll likely be then. As it stands right now, the biggest thing holding back Regis is the fact that Celeste is so good for so many players. Yeah, I mean, that's it. I mean, Donar is categorically better than Celeste if you use Krond, but not so much in a lot of other possible formations. Like, they're kind of on par. But Regis, because the companions aren't viable as a group, Regis is suffering. But like, Regis's buffing is similar. Like, it's not. I don't know if it's exactly on par right now, but like, it's similar. So we're not unhappy with Regis, but we acknowledge that the companions need some work. And yeah, Regis being a Year 1 champion is likely to get looked at then. Artifexy, is there a planned cadence for max level increases? Should we expect them quarterly, etc.? There is a planned cadence for them, but that's all in the mind of Justin. I don't have anything to update you on. I would say that quarterly would probably be expecting them too frequently. I'd say it's more likely every 4-ish months. So, you know, every trimester? I don't know. Every third of a year or so is more likely. Mars 2, who is responsible for coming up with Archon's usurped power? It's just a dang fun game mechanic, and I would love to see that same treatment in uniqueness for the other core champions. That was all Justin. 100% Justin, the Archon remake. Now, that being said, I think it's extremely unlikely that we would do that exact same treatment in for other core champions, in the sense that the core champions are supposed to be the gateway into the game, so they should be simpler and a little easier to use. Using usurp power well is much more complicated than any of the previous 11 core champions' abilities in terms of how to use them effectively in your formation. They're core champions. They shouldn't be super complicated to use. So, now that being said, we will be making some adjustments to them, but making them vastly more complex is unlikely. Odacram, how about adding secret/Uber bosses? I don't know how much that will work in an idle game, especially given that how many players would just miss it by not seeing it because the game is minimized, or it's tabbed out, or it's on at home and they're not looking at it, or whatever. So, you know, secret/Uber bosses wouldn't work in the same way as they would in other bigger games like The Witcher or something, where you can like hunt it down and make it a part of the game. So, I'm not saying it won't happen, but it's a little less likely. No pulse. Do timepieces drop randomly or at certain levels? It seemed like I got a bunch up until this last time gate was opened. Now I've only had 2. Time gate pieces drop almost weekly. I want to say it's a 6-day cooldown. It's been a while since I've answered this question. 5 or 6-day cooldown. So basically what happens is every time you get one, and you'll get one from a boss while you're playing, just idly, you get like I want to say like a 5 or a 6-day cooldown where you can't get one, and then after that it can drop from a boss again. And so you kind of average about 1 a week. So, yeah. Justin Peace Looter. Dylan, are you up to date on Critical Role? If so, oh my god, that reveal last week. Thoughts? I am not up to date on Critical Role. I did not watch last week's. I watched the first half of it up until the extra special advertisement was aired during the break. But then I haven't gotten around to watching the second half of it yet. I'm behind on a few things too, because I've been trying to catch up on Dice Camera Action. And I watched the last episode of last year with all the GIF and with Kate Welch's cameo, and so I still have to watch a few more episodes of that as well. So no, I'm not caught up on Critical Role, but given that it's on tonight, yeah, maybe I should catch up on it this afternoon when I'm getting some work done. Lumikins. Also, Bruner is much better support rally versus an actual DPS. Does anybody not choose rally for Bruner? I sincerely doubt that anybody who is well versed in the game chooses anything other than the rally specialization for Bruner. And that's something that we're kind of like we're looking at. Like, it's just, we do want choices to matter. So whether that makes his DPS spec a viable DPS spec or we do something else with it, I'm not sure. But yeah. Private Caboose 37. Are there plans on creating your own character? So if you, by that question you mean creating your own, like as a player creating a champion for in the game that is your character, we don't have plans to do that. You know, it would require building a pretty massive system that would be extremely time consuming for us to implement and extremely difficult to balance. Just the combination of races, classes, and subclasses in the player's handbook would require a pretty massive amount of work because of just the number of variations and like, you know, I mean, you multiply every racial option by every class, subclass option, and you end up with hundreds of potential things. And it's like we just don't have the resources to build something that can accommodate that with the way that this game is done. That's not a never, however, because like we love D&D and we fully recognize that the best part of playing Dungeons and Dragons is that you've made your character and you are sharing that character's story with the other people at the table, around the table. So, you know, it's not necessarily a never, but it's not something that we're looking at doing or that we have in any current plans. Iswell69, do you plan to have more familiars purchasable through gems? Yes. Spartans, is it possible to connect the Steam game data to the mobile game? It is not. Long story short, Microsoft, Sony, Apple, and Google don't necessarily see eye to eye on all things and get along, and so cross-platform functionality, information transfer, etc., is not something that we're looking at doing for this game. Drunk 27. Do you plan on adding more Xbox achievements and PlayStation 4 trophies to the game as events roll out? So, I mean, we have a fair number of achievements on those platforms already. We're not planning on doing achievements and trophies for limited time events right now. Like, it's not something that's currently in our plans, but that may change. Let's see, Colette. Hi Dylan, been away for a few months and getting back into the swing of things. Big congrats on all the fantastic work since I've been away. Any chance of a champion that boosts damage on party gold find? Would that help? Poor Jarlax will be useful. Just off the top of my head, so thinking about players who have absolutely optimized their gameplay for long periods of time, any champion who got better based on the party's gold find would get absolutely broken once you reached a certain point of favor and become the only DPS you could ever use after that, because no champion would ever catch up, if I'm understanding the way you're describing it correctly. So I'm not saying that we won't do more with gold find and champion damage, because there's room there for innovation and creative ideas where we could do some things that coincide. But just saying that like your gold find percentage impacts their DPS, I don't know. I mean, it sounds like it could get really broken. I don't know. If you're meaning something else by it, call it. Please let me know. Asador 12. As a Magic the Gathering player, as well as a DM who loves running Ravnica campaigns, any thoughts on adding some Ravnican characters? Yeah. So we definitely had thoughts on it. Right now, Wizards of the Coast is, despite how it may appear with Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, because we did ask them about this last year in the lead up to that book's release, they do keep them separate. Like, they are separate IPs with, you know, large development teams and creativity and art and resources being put behind each of them, and a Forgotten Realms focused idle strategy game is not necessarily where they want to have appearances from, you know, Ravnican characters like, I don't know, Jace. So it's unlikely. Now, that being said, Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica did kind of open the door in a unique way, so it may be possible for us to create a unique character for the game that is based on one of the Ravnican races or something at some point down the line. But yeah, actual named Ravnican characters are pretty extremely unlikely at this time. Although I'd love to get like Lavinia or Teysa in the game. That'd be cool. Anyways, Mindless systems. Has there been a contest for put your original character in the game, and or is there plans to make one? There hasn't been one, and there aren't plans to make one. But I'm not saying that that's something that we would never do. You know, I'm going to make another... This has come up enough times, I'll make another note for basically just the whole creative team to see if that's something that we might want to pursue. It's unlikely, though. Hot Tricku Girl 16. Hey Dylan, first time chatter on here. I was wondering if you could answer a question on gear. Say I get a blue piece of gear and then I get a purple piece. It'll show those, but won't show any of the previous colors like green. Personally, I love seeing having everything leading up to my purple epic, but having gaps in between is maddening. I hear you. So the main game interface, whether it's in the gamepad UI or the mouse and keyboard UI, is always going to show your highest rarity item in each slot. Just that's what it shows, because that's the bonus that you get. Now it's in the in-game menu, like you can look at other pieces of gear, whether it's on the character screen or otherwise, and I'll just kind of show you here. You know, like if I go into the details for Warden, it just shows his newest stuff. But oh god, where is it? I'm trying to remember. It's not Buffs, Blessings, Adventure. I think is it Invent? No. We have it in here somewhere. I'm just trying to remember because I spend so much time so much less time in the gamepad UI. Maybe we don't have it in the gamepad version. I could have sworn we did. No, we don't. Okay. So on the mouse and keyboard one, we have like a section where you can see which items you have and what you're missing from your collection, and it looks like I haven't implemented that the same way on the gamepad UI, or I just don't know how to do it because I haven't played this UI anywhere near as much. Wait. This is me looking for it because I had Justin show me how to do the familiars in the in-game interface last week after the stream because I didn't know how to do it. But I'm pretty sure all these just show just the top equipment that you have. Now, it's funny because so part of that stems from the fact that the original idea was that, like, why would you want to see the older ones? Because the only ones that matter are the newest ones. Like, it's not like you're going to want to use old gear. But yeah, it's there's no way to see that stuff, and yeah, it just kind of messes with your collection too, right? So one of the things about the collecting it, because you can miss green items or common items, is the part where, like, Chris wants to make it a little bit better to find that kind of stuff, like, you know, because it's easy to miss slots, and so he kind of wants to find a way that's organic and fits for the game to lost my train of thought because there's a weird smell coming from the vent up above me. Lost his train of thought in terms of blah. Hold on a second. Yeah, Erica informs me that the collections menu is not in the gamepad UI, so it's not there. So yeah, Chris wants to make it easier for you to fill out your collection so that you actually can collect everything, because getting those last common and uncommon items is really difficult. Yeah, Anathol Belazar, it does smell kind of funny. Honestly, it smells mildewy is what it smells like, which is disconcerting. So yeah, I don't know why it's suddenly smelling like that so much, but it's of concern. Okay, Colette's follow-up. The idea was to ignore the total gold find and just specifically use the gold find from characters in the group. Because as you mentioned, total gold find would be... Okay, so a champion that can use increased... that increases their power based on the other gold find champions in the party. That's an interesting idea. I'll pass that along. Let's see. Question. In-game achievements are called achievements on PC, but milestones on gamepad UI. Is there any plans on making this one term instead of two for the sake of consistency? Probably not, because I mean, just as you know, like there's a trophy system on PlayStation 4 and an achievement system on Xbox. So it's like we can't call them all achievements because on one platform they're trophies and on another platform they're achievements. So it's, you know, there isn't necessarily a consistency of language that's going to be 100% across all of them. So, Dylan, do you think introducing the capability to check in-game the upgrades of champions near the wall would be helpful to increase the best champion, allowing the best DPS improvement? Okay, so being able to see all of the potential upgrades for a champion, not just the upgrades they have already. Because, like, one of the things that we added to the gamepad UI that's not available in the console UI, sorry, the mouse and keyboard UI, is like if you go down, it's like it tells you what percentage of all of these buffs you have, so you know what's coming. Like, oh, there's another global DPS upgrade coming to Warden, and there are 4 more self DPS upgrades, and there are 2 more ability damage upgrades. So awesome. But what it doesn't do is, like, it doesn't have a upgrade tree of, like, when you start at level 1 all the way to where the level cap is, showing you where you get everything. And so we've had that request a few times, and we haven't come up with a way to put it in the game that we like yet. And we don't want to band-aid fix it, come up with a crappy version, and then have it there so that it's there for players, and then have to redesign it again later, because we'd rather spend a little bit more time one time than do it more than once. So it's just, yeah, it's just kind of how we approach it. So, but I acknowledge that it would be really helpful. Nelsing, I am a rather new player and just unlocked a familiar. Cannot afford to get one yet. But what exactly do they do? So what a familiar does is they are able to take over a tapping or clicking role for you. So I'm using a whole bunch of them right now because I have tons of them. But so using the gamepad UI, like going into familiars, you can have them doing a bunch of different things. So like player attack means that you put one, as Iris, in the middle of the battlefield, and they click for your click damage, whatever it is. So I mean, I haven't leveled up my click damage, but you know, Iris is there clicking away. At the same time, you can also, I'll just unassign her, you can click on roaming ultimate. So now Iris is moving around the ultimate abilities bar down here at the bottom and randomly casting an ultimate every 30 seconds, along with Boo and Juniper. But so you have one just kind of moving back and forth clicking. And then the other option right now is to level up one of the things along the bottom bar. So you can level up a champion, you can put them on it, and they will just continue to hit the level up button forever, you know, until you tell them to stop, or you disable them, or you reach the level cap. And that's if it's upgrade. If it's not set to upgrade, if it's set to one of the other leveling options, then it'll just keep leveling them up every time there's an opportunity. And the same thing with player attack, which is the click damage. So I can set one down here that will just increase the damage the clicking is doing, depending on how much you click, if you click when you're playing. So basically they just they allow you to automate a bit more of the game rather than just playing it yourself. I never recommend to players to buy familiars right away, because gold chests are the best use of your money up until you have at least all rare gear on all of your core champions, and ideally all epic gear on it. Then it's worth spending on familiars. But you know, depending on how you play, I mean, you might want to get them sooner. It can be pretty beneficial to have something clicking for you. So yeah. Ted Faster, will Helm get any more Tears of Blessings? Yes. Will they get them soon? I can't comment on release date. I just don't have release dates for hardly anything, really. We have a rough map of when we think things are coming, and, like, you know, yes, Grand Revel is coming in a, you know, 1 week from next Wednesday, but that's assuming everything hits the release date exactly as we want it to, and we've been getting better at that. But I don't have anything like that for when our blessings are coming or when the level cap increases are coming. Does the plan for a single ultimate use keep the current option to randomly cycle through them all? Current mechanic is generally useful, while single ult would be nice but more niche. I don't know. So here's the thing, though. Like, let's say that you have an familiar on Makos's button, but then you have a roaming familiar as well. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's something that that you can actually maybe I should save for David to kind of address, because he'll probably be the one who's putting it in the game. maybe. You know, we kind of haven't reached the point where we're going to do that yet. Cobra King of Ert? I have an idea of how to get codes in. Would you be able to do it like the Lego games? No. No, because we have to... it's a long thing to explain. We've already got a proposal in, and we're kind of just waiting for the yay from everybody. I think we've got the yay from at least a few of the parties involved already. So in which case we can build the system to that specification and then add it in. If you have a kind of like interface in your game for inputting codes like that do God mode or skip levels or what have you, and like that's part of your game's design from the get-go, then that's part of the initial process where you're working with the company to release it on their platform. We've already released the game, and so we're trying to get something else added, and so it just adds an extra layer of complexity. But thank you, Cobra King of Ert or Eert or of, assuming I'm saying that right, for your suggestion. Feybinder would love to see more famous Forgotten Realms characters and some Baldur's Gate original characters. So would we. And we have plans for some, but it's interesting in that just all the things that are in development behind the scenes and how that lines up and how that impacts our scheduling and stuff. Like, just as an example, Cathris was not originally the champion we had lined up for Midwinter to join Regis. But decisions behind the scenes shuffled things around. Not super last minute, but relatively. So, yeah, we're kind of... it's sometimes things got to move quickly. I don't know how else to put it, and like, there's not a lot I can say about behind the scenes stuff. But yes, more famous Forgotten Realms characters and possibly more Baldur's Gate characters. Yeah, we like them. Joser in D&D, an Illithid champion would be cool as a space alien parasite tentacle monster champion can be. I agree. It's hard to justify why an Illithid would be in the party, especially given that we have an event that's about killing Illithids with you know, Githyanki and Githzerai, including the unlocking Narak for it. So might be a challenge. Rokuta, hey, new player here. I feel like Cathris is no good to use because of the minus 10% gold gain. Am I crazy? Well, you're not crazy. So because you're a newer player and because your favor isn't crazy high like some of us, you are noticing the minus 10% gold gain a lot more than some players do. I mean, eventually you have truly monumental amounts of gold find. You know, like I have E43 in this adventure right now. Sorry, E43 gold and like what? E18% gold find. So minus 10% is not that noticeable for how the game plays for me. And like when the gold find isn't really hurting you that much, Cathris offers some pretty amazing buffing that is a little bit niche in terms of your formation shape, but is unquestionably powerful. So, you know, we're pretty happy with Cathris in the sense that his design, he is a viable alternative to Brunner and Deacon, and maybe you'll use one or the other instead because you have great gear on them or whatever. But he's good. Anathal Belazar, there is no formation where the max damage dealer is in the front line yet. Is there? Off the top of my head, I don't think so, especially because so many of the tank buffs buff immediately behind them. So, you know, you're never going to have your DPS in the same column as them. But I will say that I have proposed some design ideas to the team that would lead towards frontline DPS. Roland and friends, any plans for another tank? The tanking and healing update was nice, but the last event champion who was a tank was Evelyn, and that was a while ago. Yes, we do have plans for another tank. Drunks27, what about being Windows Play Anywhere compatible so we can play on Windows 10 and Xbox? that's above my pay grade in terms of that functionality. I don't have anybody to have an answer for that. I remember like when it first came up, it was one of those things. It's like we'd like to do that, but whether or not we can, I don't know. Hellestream, are there any Azamar champions in the pipeline? I don't think there are currently, at least not out of the half dozen or so that I know of off the top of my head who are coming over the next, over this year. Doesn't mean there won't be any, but like I can't think of any that are currently in our pipeline. So yes, that would mean that, I'll leave that. Autocram. What are the types of buffs that Arcan can steal? Why not survival of the fittest from Kron? So Kron's survival of the fittest is not a buff that he gives to anything. Kron's survival of the fittest affects only Kron. Especially, so Arcan can steal buffs that he could be eligible for. So, like, because survival of the fittest is like Kron's damage increases by, however percent for all the evil and strong champions. Arcan's not eligible for that because Arcan isn't Kron. But Makos' Dark Blessing buff that hits a champion, like, Arcan would be eligible for it. But if Arcan is right beside Makos, then he won't have access to it. But if he's beside Makos and beside a champion who is receiving Makos' buff, he can steal it. So Arcan can only steal buffs that he is eligible for. So, for example, like Birdsong, you can choose between good, neutral, and evil for Birdsong's buff. So if you want Arcan to steal it at the increased rate and all that stuff, you want him to be stealing the evil version of the buff. So, yeah. Ronan IC. Who are your top 3 favorite core champions, and who are your least favorite core champions, and why? I really love what's been done with Archon. I think that it truly benefits a player to think through usurp power and completely build your formation around it, and it rewards you for doing it. So like he's kind of my favorite in terms of the core champions. Just a second, I'll click on something. Now, I think that like Makos is probably one of the better designed ones, and like he needs tweaks unquestionably, but the fact that players have come up with a way to Makos gold farm that works extremely well speaks to a depth of an unintended depth to the champion that makes him more than just a party buffer, which I really like. Yeah, and like I guess the other one is probably either Tyrell or Calliope, just because like we don't use temporary HP or shields very much in the game, and that's something that Calliope does that matters much more so now with the tanking and healing update. But like it matters, and then Tyrell is a very viable tank as a bear, but is also a fantastic buffer. Probably too good of a buffer, but so like they're the ones that I see as like my favorites, but just Archon and Makos probably. In terms of my least favorite, like I don't like Brunner, Celeste, or Naeli in the sense that their designs are I don't want to say bland, that's not right, but they're so basic that I don't find them entertaining or engaging to use. That's it. Like, oh, Brunner, you're just in the same column. Celeste, you just want to be right beside them, and she heals in front, and like it's just kind of like there's not a huge amount of depth to it, and like that's a necessary thing that's really important to core characters that are people's gateway into playing a game, because you want them to be able to get it. But like I don't find it fun, and so I find that anytime I can, I don't use them. And I'm not going to get into Jarlaxle and Delana and Minsk because like it's clear that they need some TLC and they're going to get it. So, alrighty. So let's see. Kalata. I'm going to go into this one before I introduce my guest who's waiting patiently to the side. Just wanted to say that I tried the game about a year ago. From what my Steam tells me, and stopped because I didn't quite enjoy it, probably due to not understanding it. I saw the Critical Role ad either a week or two ago and downloaded it again, and have fallen in love with the art style and design with a more strategy-oriented idle game. Still a total noob in getting my mind around the mechanics, but enjoying it nonetheless. Keep it up. I was expecting a question at the end of that. I was just reading it. Thank you. That's awesome. And I'm going to answer this next one because players will want this. Round 91. Would you maybe add a feature for offline stage progress? Dave?
All right. We're a little tight in here today, huh?
Oh, sorry, I can do this.
So I don't end up with half my head cut off.
Yeah. What say you, Dave, about the idea of offline stage progress?
That's a good question. I don't know, what were we telling people about that at this point?
We haven't told the players anything.
Well, oops. No, offline stage progress is something that has, well, it was something that was in Crusaders that we didn't include in Champions to begin with, mainly because it had some disadvantages, mainly that you could cheese some of the more complicated variant, what's the word for them? Objective pieces, ones that required, like, you know, if some random monster spawned during it, or if there was something that was doing damage at intervals, we were unable to work that into what was going on with the actual offline progression. And if there was anything that required sort of player interaction with it, then that could just be, oh well, it happened, and then you sort of bypass it. So we have been talking about doing something that is a limited version of that that would apply to free plays. So it's something that, it's not something that we've actually started work on at this point, but it is something that we've been discussing, and it's likely to get put in part of the quality of life updates that we're looking at doing.
So yes, free play only.
Yeah, to prevent bypassing any of the more complex variant mechanics.
You could have been so much more excited about that, but you're like, yeah, sure.
Oh, you caught me off guard with it. I wasn't.
It just seemed like such a good time to segue into it because it was the question. Alrighty. I just have 3 others here before we get into your UI hazing that is likely to come.
Oh boy. It's been a while. I'm excited.
Yeah, Jokers Forever. Since it's been said that giving us our own hero to represent our click damage, would putting in upgrades like the heroes get on a lesser scale for leveling up to certain levels, like at 500, an option to keep the ice or blue or acid, give us more fun options to use and make us stand out. So they just want options with click damage. That's it. Yeah.
Sounds like something that that we could put on the list to look at. I mean, as long as it isn't here's getting listed. Yeah, I mean, there's certainly something could be played with to make click damage more interesting. It's obviously it's pretty boring right now. Click, you do damage. Yeah.
I mean, is it force damage? Is it piercing, bludgeoning, or slashing damage? Alrighty. Is it better to turn in the favor early or to stockpile it for better gold gains, or does it really depend on the playstyle of the player? The best time to turn in for your favor is when you can't make progress easily anymore. So if you've reached a level and you haven't progressed for an hour or two, like you just can't seem to get past it, and you're not earning enough to buy upgrades or whatever, start again.
Is that question of whether it's a good time to when's a good time to complete the adventure? Is that a question about when you should convert your favor into blessings?
So on the note of blessings, I never spend more than half of what I have on blessings. That's kind of where I cap it out.
Yeah, I mean, my approach on blessings tended to be if I could purchase the blessing for what is obviously, or what is basically an insignificant amount, like it's just a rounding error, then do it. Otherwise, hold off until it's just a rounding error, which it eventually becomes. Yeah.
Well, because like each of the blessings, like when you invest in them, you tend to make it further, even though you've lost favor. Yeah,
it's a careful balance, though, right? That's the
it's definitely easy to spend too much and be like, oh, unspend, lose 1% or whatever it is. Yeah,
right. And that's what the unspend is for. Obviously, you can make a big mistake and then be way behind. So
That's a good question for Justin. Giant Dwarf, I just read your question about multi-tank formations, and that's a good question for Justin, so I'm just going to put it aside for now. All right, Faust Dimos, is there a way to increase the window size but not have it in a full screen?
Yes. I mean, the question is there, you can change the resolution, and that will change the window size. Changing the resolution won't, or I'm not 100% sure if that question is around just wanting to scale the window size up. I know I had someone email me just the other day talking about wanting to actually like grab a hold of the window corners and scale them to move it around, because they were trying to, I think they were trying to stream it from one computer to another for some reason that I'm not 100% sure. But you can change the resolution of the window in the game settings if that's what you want to do to make the window bigger. There's also a settings file that you can dig to and change the resolution to any reasonable resolution that you're looking to change the game to, if that's sort of that customization level was something you wanted to do. But beyond that, I think the answer is you already can change the window size, just not freely, as in like grabbing the corners and moving it around. And the main reason you can't do that is because that does have an impact on like where the monsters are on the screen. And we do adjust it so that we make sure that everything moves at the same speed depending on, or independent of what resolution you're at. Mm-hmm. But you can do some weird cheeses by like pulling it down too small past the formation, and then things immediately go back to the previous level because it thinks the monsters have passed the formation, and a bunch of odd things that just are avoided by not letting you just grab a hold of the window and resize it. I hope that answers the question.
This next question, can you explain why you haven't implemented a system to use blacksmithing contracts in bulk? Would that be server heavy? Would that be server heavy, as you need to loop through every contract, do a math random, level the item, and repeat?
No, it's just something we haven't had time to look into in more detail, something we'd want to be able to do with just to make the UI user-friendly. And that is something that we want to look into going forward. I don't know if Justin might have mentioned that on the previous stream, but
it is a feature, and it's actually listed. It's listed in the Q&A under our quality of life updates as well. Like things that we're working on is improving blacksmith contract usage, which admittedly doesn't explain the whole thing outright, but
that's fair.
That's what it's in relation to.
Yeah, we definitely want to make it so that you can. It's easier to use blacksmith contracts in bulk. So I guess the answer is the reason we haven't implemented it at this point is because we haven't had time to look into that in detail. But it is something that is now going to be coming up in our quality of life updates, and so we'll have something, some improvements on that hopefully soon.
So Colette asked me a question, but it's for you. The gamepad button that shows the formation DPS. Can I do this on PC without a gamepad? This part. Yeah.
So that's definitely something that we want to put into the PC version onto a button. It's just not something that's what we've gotten around to putting into yet. There's a handful of things in the console UI that we'd like to port back to the just the basic Windows UI.
Like these character portraits.
Oh, those are amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah. So the answer is not at this time, but it is on the list of things we want to make available in just the default UI.
Let's see. Oh, well, crazy. I wonder how often Dave gets 2001 jokes thrown at him.
Oh, not that frequent. Not as frequently as you might think, but it does happen.
Alrighty. So Lisa, can we get the ability to hold down the mouse button to buy champion upgrades quickly? Console has this with button presses. Oh, I like that one, actually. That's one of my favorite ones.
Holding down the mouse button to buy champion upgrades.
Yeah, so I can go, like, hey, I want to unlock Azaka. Oh, I'm up to here.
Yeah.
Just hold down the button and just like fly through all the levels. But it also gets the upgrades as you're getting it. You don't have to click on it.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why we couldn't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think anyone's mentioned it before.
I don't know. Maybe.
Make a note of it.
It's a good quality of life one.
We can definitely do that. Yeah.
David, do this.
David, tell Jacob to do this.
I'm just gonna put Jacob.
Perfect.
All right, another question for Dave. Any progress on the disappearing graphics issue? Happens after about a week of running Idle Champions, or quicker if I'm using familiars.
Oh, no. We don't know what causes that, and the biggest issue with it is that it doesn't happen for us developers when we're working on it, and I guess in general we don't leave the thing running for more than a few hours at a time in the development environment. But when trying to track some of this stuff down, we have let it run for hours with at a higher speed than even the speed potions let, and it doesn't happen. So right now I'm not really sure exactly what the cause of that is. I know I think Silas had mentioned in one of her tickets that she had there had been some question of whether it was memory related, and it seemed like some players had a large amount of RAM available, and it was still happening for them, and on some systems with very little, it wasn't happening. So at this point, I'm not 100% sure. I think it might be configuration related, because obviously, as I said before, it doesn't happen for us.
Do we use familiars in the dev environment?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Everyone who's working on it has a different configuration of what they've got set up, and often things get sort of left over from whatever bug we're testing, and often they include familiars. So yeah, we're not sure. We've seen it happen once or twice. I think Justin's had it happen a couple of times, but it's never been in a place where we could actually check and see what it was. And the timing on it has always been not really pointing towards what the cause might be, because sometimes it happens in 10 minutes and sometimes he's left it open for days before it happens. So it's a big question mark. I'd love to figure out what it is, but it hasn't been something that's been forthcoming.
Does it have anything to do with the part where last week Justin was saying that we just don't use Unity the way it was designed to be used?
I don't think so, but it is like we do draw on top of Unity. We use Unity as a sort of the base underlying platform, which lets us build for multiple platforms. But we actually don't use any of Unity's actual drawing tools. We just draw a bunch of we collect all of our graphics, which we do in Flash, and then we export them in a way that lets us draw them as a bunch of quads on screen. So, well, it's technically 3D is what you're looking at, but it's a bunch of quads getting textures drawn on them. It does result in a bunch of custom sorting, and when there's a lot of items on the screen, we have seen sometimes things go in front of or behind things that they're not expected to. Okay. But I don't think it has something to do with that. But at the end of the day, that whole level of the system is on our side. So.
Alrighty, Giant Dwarf. Is it possible to have the DPS from achievements go towards click damage as well? Because whether it's your first run with the tutorial or your 500th, your click damage off of levels is always identical.
I mean, it's certainly possible. That would be a question I would point towards Justin and see what he thought.
Would you add a deck of many things?
That could be cool. I'm not entirely sure where that would apply in terms of, I guess, it's sort of random things that occur. Maybe something you could roll and then have
just
some
horrible events happen to you.
Yeah, or sort of like possibly you might get a debuff, you might get a buff, you might get just a random monster that rolls you over. Yeah, that could be fun.
Apparently some of my monsters went invisible just now, but I haven't caught it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, it's happening. It's happening right now.
See, this is... Yeah. right midstream, I can go ahead and attach the debugger here and do it live.
But yeah.
Oh yeah, you're getting invisible monsters, and once they're invisible, they stay invisible.
That's so weird.
Honestly, I wish I knew what was going on there.
Yeah, because the little dust things are showing up from where they're walking on some of them. Right? Yeah, there's another one. What the hell? So I've left this running since this morning in here, because this was like I started this run at normal speed 278 areas ago.
Right, and the timing it takes seems random.
Yeah, that would be close to 5 hours.
Yeah.
It's funny that they're telling us about this bug, and then in chat they're like, "Look at your screen, it's right there." Yeah, that's so strange. Are there any plans, or is there a method for cross-platform play of the game?
I mean, I think you've already answered this already earlier in the stream, which is we're sort of locked out, or not, we're hamstrung by the platforms that don't necessarily want you to play on the across them.
Yeah, we're not Fortnite, so we don't just get what we want. Yeah. Any chance of making the mouse clicking useful other than the interrupting of arrow users and the very small literal poke damage? So just more variability in clicks.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that it is certainly useful in certain scenarios, but it's not always useful. And that would be, I mean, I think the intention isn't that it would be something you would always be able to have a value for, because the intention of an idle game is that you can leave it idle. So I mean, I think Justin would have more to say on that one. I don't know, he sort of originally shied away from it just for that reason.
Yeah.
It should be less active play. Not that we're succeeding on that front in various other places, but yeah, certainly the click damage is pretty simplistic and could use a little love.
Mm-hmm. Are there any plans for the PlayStation 3s to run the PlayStation 4 version?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I can't imagine us going back a generation in the platform at that point. Never mind, PlayStation 3s are not as powerful as PS4s. That could be a challenge to...
Yeah, I think we'd be pushing our luck a little bit there. Yeah.
Alrighty. What event formations do you think are the most difficult? As I've played back through time gates, I've been seeing many of them post-tanking update, and some feel completely different.
Yeah, I mean, off the top of my head, I can't think of one that stands out. I mean, the more anyone in particular, certainly the more that there are gaps in between them, the harder they get. But yeah, I can't think of one that stands out as like, that was the hardest formation.
There are some pretty freaking wacky ones. I'm trying to remember which ones. I think the one for Bright Swords with Wolfgar was a nightmare. I remember that one being crappy. Just a weird,
yeah, there's some that are
shape.
odd patterns, and then of course because of the odd shape, they don't connect to other slots, and that of course makes everyone less likely to be getting a buff where you positioned them.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Does the Unity engine have the option to make the game available on Linux distros?
It does, but it's not something that we're supporting at this time, just because of the additional support work that would be required in getting the builds done and making sure that there are any bug fixes were like it's a whole other platform that we'd have to track and maintain. So that's why we don't do it.
Yeah, and also like Linux. My strongest memory of Linux was going to a LAN party when I was a teenager to play Counter-Strike, and one of my buddies was going to quickly partition his hard drive to also have a Linux drive on it at the same time, and it stalled out for some reason. I can't remember why. I installed it long enough, he's like, well, I guess I reset my computer, and so he does, and the first thing that comes in is the like scan disk or whatever that old like Windows 95 type program was, and it's like you have, and so like it puts up that grid that represents your hard drive storage with like the shaded colors depending on how much data, but the other, as part of the legend, it's like, you know, like white is it's full all the way down to like this dark gray color where it's empty, and like the different shades in between signifying how much data is being stored in clusters on it. But then there's another option on that legend where it's a little black box with a red B in it that means it's now a bad sector, and it's just like the whole thing just was bad sectors. And he's just like, and I like looked at him. I'm like, "You're not going to play tonight, are you?" As he formatted his drives and had to reinstall everything on his computer.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't put that on Linux, but
no, that was it was entirely just the way he failed to set up his partition just as a new
yeah, and these things never go as quickly as you hope for something like that. Oh, I will just reformat it. Oops.
Yeah, no, that was pretty funny. So
yeah, I mean, all of our servers are running Linux, and so certainly it's a big thing for us to we do actually do a lot of work with Linux, but not for not as desktop and not for games, back-end servers.
Trills Gaming wants to know if there are plans for a rarity higher than Purple/Epic in Idle Champions, like Crusaders.
You know, it's not something that's come up recently, but it's certainly, you know, the legendary card is that piece we hold close to our chest that we'll be able to pull out at some point. But it's not something that we've talked about prior to like the original inception of the game, where it's like, all right, we've got these additional levels if we needed them. So it'd likely be a late game thing. I mean, obviously I'm not promising anything about it at this point, but eventually that card might get played.
Pun intended. Could we get a way to clear formation saves?
Sure. Yeah.
David says yes, it's going to happen someday. Oh, LA Rue 12. Any chance of seeing Scanlan in the game anytime soon? As I say every time a Critical Role character is mentioned, we would love to, if that opportunity presented itself. Yeah, but right now, no plans. Evil Sales Ass. I unlocked Boo last week. Waits for applause. And hey, right on. Like, what is that? Like 70,000 gems? Like, Boo is no joke to get. Are there any plans to use gems for other things in addition to gold chests?
I think it's something that'll likely show up at some point. It's something that gets talked about on a regular basis, or rather gets brought up on a regular basis, and then sort of ideas are kicked around a little bit, but it isn't something that's come up as like all right, now we're gonna get this in. But my feeling is that at some point we will end up with more items available for gems. Yeah.
That's kind of like oh wait, no, hold on. Stuff's showing up. Erica's doing things. There are so many formation options now. Would you consider making respecs free? So I guess the potion of specialization.
Yeah, I mean that would be a question for Justin for sure.
It's interesting.
I guess the question is what is the availability of those actually working out at? In terms of like, are people finding that they want to try a variety of different setups?
You can spend gems on them.
Fair enough. Yeah, I know one of the things that Justin would like to do, and I'm not sure if there's any timing on this at all, would be some way to actually do a test formation setup, and that would have something that could let you swap the formation or swap the respecs around and sort of say, if I was using this and I was using this character and they were using this specialization, what would my DPS look like? And then even have something to scale it up and down between the levels. So I mean, something like that would handle that. But yeah, I can't see the respec potions becoming just free. But yeah, maybe it is something we put on sale for gems.
Is there a reason some of the character portraits have a green border instead of a white one? Yeah, so on screen right now, it signifies the champions that are actually in, well, in this case, they're not even purchased, but the ones that are in the formation are green. So Stokey, Catti-brie, and Neris are not. I'm gonna level up Neris, because I like Neris. There, all those levels that you're not using. Sure, I'll level up Catti-brie as well, why not? In the zone. But yeah, in this case, it's because the green ones are actually in the formation. Oh, it's so satisfying to level them up that way. That's way better. Come on, Dave.
No, I said we could probably do that. Yeah, just give it over to Jacob. He can make it happen.
Yeah. All right. What do we got next? Oh, no, we answered that question.
All right.
Wow.
Did we run out of questions?
Yeah. No, that's good. I mean, Justin was pretty thorough last week, and then we've been talking about the core champion stuff. So, yeah.
All right, I'm out of here now.
Yeah. And I have to go to the bathroom. End the stream early? No. Does anybody have any other questions that a man such as Dave could answer for you?
I will also take woodworking questions. No.
Hey, why not? I mean, you did build like all the desks in the office. Oh, bunch of stuff coming up. Oh, and Clive's posting stuff. Ronan IC wants to know what you are most proud of in accomplishing with Idle Champions. Where's your proud Dave moment in the game?
For Idle Champions, I mean, for the pieces that I've worked on directly for Idle Champions, which is largely it's the graphic tech pieces, and then a lot of the cross-platform stuff that we have put together so that it actually works again on, at this point, what are we at? 5 platforms? 5 or 6. Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I'm proud of from a technological standpoint would be our graphics system, and then as far as like just from a game standpoint, I mean, I think this has got to be our largest game at this point that's reached the most number of people, and that actually connected us with a lot of community members that the things we wouldn't have previously done, especially like the stuff we did at PAX. At least I was at the PAX. Just before September, the end of August, getting to meet the streamers and all the fans that came by the booth. Yeah, it's really cool. I'd say that's probably more than a technological thing, but from a game standpoint that I'm most proud of.
Rizlaflow wants to know if we will see event formations in permanent campaigns.
Certainly, it could happen. I mean, generally speaking, I know Justin likes to have a different formation for every campaign. Did we end up? Actually, that's a good question. Did we end up with? We did end up with a different formation between the main campaign and Tomb of Annihilation, right?
Yeah. The main one's a diamond, like the
Yeah.
nine character diamond, and then the Tomb of Annihilation is a 10 character triangle with a four character back row.
Right.
And then the Waterdeep Dragon Heist one is kind of like a circle with like a bit more in the back row, almost, or no, a bit more in the front.
Right.
So
I mean, my guess is that Justin's going to try and make the formations for every single variant or every single campaign, every single event different until forced to do otherwise. So my guess is no, that won't happen.
Yeah. And I think last week we were toying with the idea of having a formation slot where a campaign or a variant or something where all the formation slots are available. So there's like 15 of them, but you have a limit to how many champions you can have in it. So you can build any formation shape that you want, but you're limited by how many characters you can use, which would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, that could be an interesting. Yeah, I think there's a lot of different things we can explore with the formations. So that's why I think that it's going to be a while before we end up with having to have a repeat. And then as far as the permanent campaigns go, because they're released at such a large interval between them, it'd take a long time to run out of those.
Mm-hmm. What are the odds of a formation history option?
A dime for every time I hit the swap formation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is actually something that we talked about when we were putting together the formations UI for the console, the formation UI for the console UI, and that was like an undo and like an immediate like oops, and it didn't actually end up implemented in there, and I think it's just because that idea wasn't conveyed through to Jacob, who eventually did the actual implementation of that. So if we can remember to flag that one, I think we could go back and have like if it's just a revert, like an immediate undo, be like oops, then you'd be okay. I think we could put that in. Yeah.
Cerberus GK, when will the Android version get the gamepad UI layout, and will it reset progress?
Never. There are no plans to implement the gamepad UI on Android or any of the tablet versions.
Yeah, and to speak a little bit more to that, because players are like, what, why? Gamepad support is not universal across those devices, and there's no way for us to know whether or not a device would be able to have one. Like, it's not something that's like an industry standard where like they all have a controller that plugs into them. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not a super common use case, and I think it'd come with a lot of headaches. So unless it was proven that it would, that half the Android players wanted to play with controllers, and
then their devices are also able to plug in a controller. Like, it's just
either you plug it in or it's Bluetooth, or and then the mapping of that would probably require some sort of some sort of custom button mapping to figure out what was what, and if it even had all the right buttons, it would be a significant amount of work, and I think our time is better spent on features that hit more players.
Will there be a way to preview saved formations? With so many events, it's hard to remember why I save a particular formation, or maybe a way to add notes.
I mean, it's kind of a nice quality of life option to preview something. I know it was something we talked about again when we were looking through them. The bringing it up and then maybe having like a confirm after you've selected is one option. The only issue with that is that it does add additional steps to recovering that. I mean, it's certainly something we can think about if there's a good way to do that doesn't result in either additional button presses to get you back to where you were if you actually knew that was where you were going, or something that wouldn't be confusing. I think when we first talked about it, the confusing bit would be that if it would place in champions over top of what was already there and like continue playing with that there, like would it pause the game? Yeah, it requires a little more thought.
Well, there's like we get a lot of feedback around formations and how people would like to see it, from having different icon selections for choosing their formations to naming them to more slots to, to like it's just kind of a lot of stuff comes up. So it's clear that, like, I think Justin mentioned this last week on stream too, that like it's beyond us just adding more formation slots to the interface. It's at the point where it's like, okay, when we tackle this again, we actually need to look at it and look at all the things we'd like to do with formations and how we'd like to approach it and how we'd like to represent it and how it would include familiars and all this different stuff, and come up with something that works to address all of the issues at once instead of just kind of incrementally doing different things.
Yeah, definitely. As well as like across the UI too, right? It's one of those. It's starting to become a challenge of, if on the Steam version where you've got a keyboard, you bring it up, name the formation. How does that actually work on, say, PlayStation? And and is that actually something that players want to do if they bring it up on PlayStation? Do they want to have, like, I guess there's an on-screen keyboard you could bring up, but is that the ideal way to label that? Or maybe what it needs is something that you could assign a name to that formation that's from a selected list of, like, this is my DPS formation, or this is my tank formation, this is my for whatever.
Yeah.
So and maybe they're not sort of classifiable enough like that to be able to do that. So it needs a little more thought, and I also think that from the feedback we've gotten from various different players that not everyone's on the same page about that. So sort of trying to find a common ground that works for everybody.
Yeah. Gara, question: quality of life change. Replay last adventure button at the end of an adventure that just restarts what you last played.
Yeah.
That's actually a really good one.
Yeah. No, I mean, I see a lot of players who play particular free plays over and over again for farming.
Mad Wizard.
That's a common one.
Or Beast Intentions.
Yeah.
Are we ever going to get some of the Critical Role people in Idle Champions? Welcome, player. We would love to. Like, just straight up, we like Critical Role a lot. We were honored to be able to sponsor their Talks Machina and Critical Role episode last week. We would love to be able to include some of their characters in the game, but if that opportunity presents itself, let's kind of just kind of leave it at that. And they're great people to work with because we've got to work with them a bit already. Question: why no obvious information flag for Cthulhu's Gold Collection ability, much like Azaka's transformations?
That is something I can speak directly to, actually, because I actually ended up implementing the Cthulhu's Gold Collection ability, and I based its initial layout on Azaka's transformation, and actually for the longest time while I was developing it, it had Azaka's little bar over top of it to count up the coins, because we didn't have a graphic for that that was different from Azaka's at that point. When it came time to decide if that was something that we wanted to have there or not, though, we were going to do a custom one for Cthulhu, we opted not to put it there, just because it seemed like it was going to add additional clutter to the way the formation was set up there, and unlike Azaka's one, which goes back and forth, we actually sort of felt that was really wasn't as critical information. It wasn't going to be as useful. So it was sort of a trade-off of, this is going to make it a little more messy. What are we going to show on it? We show a little. I can picture the bar with the little shadow demon sort of clawing over top of it, which I thought would work. But the decision was that it was additional clutter and not necessarily as useful information as for the cost of adding that extra piece there. But yeah, it was something we just turned on and turned off while we were playing with it. Thought it looked better without.
Yeah. Are you still looking into the sudden DPS drops? My DPS sometimes drops lower than the base damage of my main champion.
Yeah, so I mean, this is an interesting question because ever since the tanking and healing update, the DPS at the top includes a running average of how much damage you're actually doing. And so this has made the determining what your damage levels are actually at, or whether if there's an issue, like if something is bugging out, more difficult to determine, because it is natural when you switch levels, especially when you switch from a normal level to a boss level, to find that your DPS actually starts to average down because you stop getting as many kills, because you stop getting as many area of effect hits, which otherwise would have been bumping up your DPS. So one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to put in a display that shows the breakdown of where the additional average DPS is getting added in, like what the multipliers are on each champion, and that should help us determine like whether or not the value drop we're seeing is because you're losing out on certain abilities that aren't triggering anymore because there's less monsters and less kills happening, or if something is actually not working as intended. As it stands right now, I mean, I've looked at it for several hours going over sort of the clips and the people have sent me, trying to get formation reproduction that's similar to what I've seen in their screenshots. And I've given that to Mark, and he's gone through a bunch of them, and he's not 100% sure either exactly what's being seen, whether it's not expected due to the average changes or whether there is actually something that's not right. So once we get some better display information in there, that should actually help sort of clarify what's happening, and if there's something that needs to be looked at in more detail, or if, like, because we're looking at it and saying, well, it looks like this should be the reduction based on the average, but maybe not. So it's hard to tell. So more information, more on-screen information, more detailed breakdowns, and we get those in, and then it'll be easier to tell if that's like what's actually happening there.
Okay. So for newbies, it's difficult to know which upgrade specializations, like what they actually do. Any chance of fixing that? A good example is Tyrell. During the specializations choice, it doesn't even say that one of the wild shape paths buffs are only for good characters.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. Certainly Justin can take a look at that. As far as the majority of them, I mean, you try them out, see how they play, because of the way the game plays. You'll get another chance with the next reset or the next adventure complete to try a different path. So I mean, experimenting is the way to go there. But yeah, if certain key details are sort of left out, like that it only affects certain types of characters, we don't say that, then that should be included. I agree.
Okay. And then the next one is a woodworking question. What woodworking project are you most proud of? And I'm going to go to the bathroom while you answer that one.
All right. Watch out. So yes, I mean, that's an interesting question. As Dylan mentioned, I actually did a lot of I did the design for the desk we have here in the office, and actually the streaming carts that we've got in here, as well as what we used for Extra Life. So that's certainly something that I enjoy doing. What would I say is the most proud of? I think it's probably would be. Oh, that's a really good question. We did a green and green style blanket chest that turned out really well, and that was based on plans that were done from a website called the Wood Whisperer. So that's actually. I'd probably say that was the one I was most proud of. It took like 4 months of intricate chiseling, and it had a whole lot of little pieces to it, and then that's what gives it a very intricate look. But it's also was also an awful lot of work. Well, let's see, what else do we have here? We'll carry on. Question. What was the most surprising thing from the SH&T update for you guys? Most surprising thing from the SH&T? I mean, that's a good question. I don't know that anything was really surprising from the update. Maybe follow up with that to sort of what sort of direction you were looking for it for that question. But I mean, it had a significant number of changes that resulted in a lot of rework internally. All things we wanted to get done, like getting in the additional DPS changes, getting in some of the gold offline gold find pieces. I mean, those were a lot of. They took a lot of time, but I wouldn't say that was surprising. It was sort of something we knew going into it. Yeah, I mean, Dylan, did you find anything surprising about the SH&T update?
Oh, the tanking and healing update. I think the biggest thing was that, like, there was a sense of anxiety around how close will the gameplay experience be to how it is pre-update, and will anything break? And then when it was pushed, it was like switching a light. It was just like, it was fine. The game plays almost identically. Like, you have to be a little bit more conscious of having tanks in the front now, and like their health does matter because you can get nuked by bosses and stuff in a way that you couldn't previously. But there was always there was like just a little bit of worry, like, well, hopefully nothing just like explodes. And so it, like, you know, not to discount just how smart Justin is, but like there was always a worry that it just wouldn't work, and it worked great because, you know.
Yeah, and there was certainly a lot of anxiety from the players around that one too, that, you know, there was going to be a major rework and that the game would irrevocably be changed in a way that may ruin the fun, right?
Yeah. Well, the thing about that is that like, we thoroughly explained what was going to change, and it kind of looked like more was going to change than was actually going to change. And it's just like, it's just being thorough and explaining it, but at the same time, it's like, you know, the gameplay is not going to change at all, really. It's just that, like, you're going to want your tanks in front. You're going to care about whether or not tanks are there, and like healing will also matter to a degree. So it's just, yeah, it was just kind of an interesting thing. That, and I think that as much as we expected Barrowin to change, it was like balancing her, and she's much more balanced now. I mean, she's not as good as Tyrell, because Tyrell's a bit too good right now, but it had like a pretty significant amount of collateral damage for both Binwin and Strix. So, you know, more so than I think we were expecting. Scheisenberg, any chance of Ashara getting more buffs to compete with Evelyn?
Yeah, I mean, that's a Justin question.
But also I think the answer is yes. A way to name your formations, I think we covered that.
Yeah.
Maybe if we could pause the waves. It's hard to switch formations near your wall, especially if you accidentally load the wrong one. That's a fair point. I mean, unless you have a Shara handy to blow everybody back and then move everything around, and that'll only work if your tank's not being shot. So yeah, that's a fair point.
Yeah, you'd want something that would be a brief pause. I know we've never had anything in it just to pause the game, because the concern would be someone would accidentally leave it paused and come back, 10 hours later and have missed out on a lot of progress, and that would result in people writing in being like, hey, can you fix this for me? But maybe something like, I'd like a 30-second pause, click go, and then if once it expires, it's gone on its own. It could be something to consider.
Sorry, I just realized that the tree blight is there, but it's invisible, so.
I feel shame. Shame is a minor action.
Yeah.
Oh.
I really like the tree blight. It's such a cool looking boss.
Well, you know how to fix it. You can restart your client. And,
yeah? Oh, that's a great idea. Wow. Most embarrassing stream ever. But confirmation that this bug exists.
I mean, I know it exists. I've seen it happen. I just haven't been able to get it to happen in a way that we can check what's going on. Yeah.
I don't worry. I got this. I'll kill this tree blight. It's toast.
This invisible tree blight?
Yeah. I know it's there. I can't tell how many stacks of hex are on it, but I'm assuming that there's enough. Crap.
Yeah, I mean, that's the interesting thing there too, right? It's not this the graphic is missing, it's anything that would have been attached to that graphic is missing too.
Yeah, right. That's kind of strange.
Because you wouldn't think that the hex icon is not something that's not loaded as well as the tree. So
yeah, it's showing up on everything else.
Yeah.
Mysteries. Mysteries all. All right. We have time for a handful more questions. Let's see. Dave, something strange on console is you cannot select your level. You can either go back or turn on auto progress all the way forward. I remember mentioning that to Peter way back, because you can't.
Can you not just hold backwards and it goes, or hold forwards?
So
does it always go to the first
what
level?
What you can't do is like go along the bar. I'm gesturing to the bar up there, and just move back and forth on it, and then select the level that you want to go to.
That's true. That was. Yeah, I mean, we've got the hold the stick, and then it starts to tick forward or backwards on the levels, right? So
yeah, like you can go back one.
But you can go back like 10 if you'd like. You just keep holding the stick.
Still no tree. Damn. I mean, I know he's getting attacked because he's right there.
But does it always go to the first level? Yeah.
Yeah.
Or not the first level, but the highest level.
Yeah, yeah. It's just kind of like.
It's not ideal.
And there's a couple scenarios I can think of where it would be really helpful to be able to pick a specific one. So.
Yeah, the trick with that would just be finding a way to make it, or to get the controls over to the bar, like so that you could actually manipulate it, because it's not something that we generally do. I think as you keep pushing up, it maybe go to the top bar, and then maybe you can move back and forth on it, just as long as it wasn't something that ended up being confusing. Yeah, I mean, I think something like that would require a little more thought. Yeah.
As somebody who studied orchestral composition in university and intended to work in the game industry, I am curious if you could elaborate on how you went about the music you chose and developed for Idle Champions.
Sure. So, I mean, the music itself was done by a composer that we've worked with. And I'm at a loss for his last name. His name is Alec. That's just embarrassing. Anyway, we've worked with him before on some of our previous games. And we basically get some music that we think is about the right style for what we want, and we provide the samples to him, and then sort of a theme around it, and then he came back to us with short sequences that he'd done on each of those, and then we chose one that worked for us. We didn't actually have a whole lot of options with the music when we were starting it, and there was some particular constraints that Wizards had for the way they wanted to do the style for it. Actually, the music that you're hearing in the background right now, I think, is actually a music that the same
Autumn Forest from Shards of Titan.
Yes, music the same composer did for us for an earlier game. Yeah, I mean, it's not something that we have a lot of expertise here in studio. So we basically get a direction, and we kind of have an idea of what we're looking for, and then we tell that to a talented composer, and they produce some work for us, and we say yay or nay for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
I know with the Champions music, it came together without a whole lot of back and forth, which was nice. But in some of the previous stuff, we'd go over it and sort of say this section's too fast or this section's too slow, or can you reduce the amount of horns here, drums here, strings here, etc., to sort of get it to what we wanted. But mainly we relied on the talent of the composer.
Cool. Giant Dwarf would like to know why they can't change formations even if the front line is going to be the same in the other formation.
Even when they're under attack. Or is that what the...
Yeah, so when they're under attack, like you have one guy in front, but all of your front line are going to be exactly the same, and you're just changing stuff around with your other formation save, but you still can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's not... I mean, it's just a broad strokes. Is the formation under attack, yay or nay? Can you switch it? It's not going into the details of, like, are these ones not going to change? I mean, that's a good point, that if the front line champions, if only the champions that aren't under attack aren't going to change, then maybe the formation should be able to change. But yeah, I mean, we could discuss it internally and see if it made sense to sort of reduce the restrictions on that. But yeah, the reason it is like that is just because it's broad strokes. Is anyone under attack? Yes, no. Well, I guess you can't change formation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mage Pie, what is the best kind of wood to build a gaming desktop out of?
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be a preference thing, right? Like, I mean, I would build one out of cherry because I'm fond of cherry, but
Isn't this cherry?
no, those are these streaming tables were quick and dirty. Those are pine.
Oh, okay.
Although most of the desks in the rest of the office are cherry, but yeah, yeah. It's really a personal preference, Maybe some Purple Heart, something that'd be a nice one too. Expensive though.
Well, if I were to judge by what it costs to get the Wormwood gaming trays that are made out of the Purple Heart wood, shit's expensive.
Oh.
Yeah, they're beautiful. They're so beautiful, but wow. I had to. What did I settle for? I settled for one that's like almost black. I forget what it's called.
Ebony? No.
No, it wasn't ebony. It was something else. But it was something close. Yeah. It looks real nice holding my dice. Schmecker. I looked all over for a good idle game last year, but I didn't find you guys until Critical Role. Any other marketing strategies? Oh, I guess that's a question for me. Yes. So what's really interesting is that, like, we're the most played Dungeons and Dragons Steam game. And like there are a lot of users on Steam. But what you'll find with Steam and a lot of other platforms is that like how users find games and how they show up in featuring and stuff, it's all automated by algorithms. And like you have to like be successful to be successful for some of them. Like any AAA title that comes out that's probably going to pre-sale a truckload will get that massive disproportionate amount of the attention and featuring and additional platform promotion just because they're already more popular. Because like at the end of the day, these platforms are about making money for the companies that use them. So like Valve likes money. Valve takes a cut of everything on Steam. The things that get the most attention will continue to get more attention from their algorithms and get featured that way. And so like for us, there are other idle games that came out at the same time as Idle Champions or shortly after that like nobody ever saw for whatever reason. And like, it's not because they didn't make good games, because they did make good games. It's because, indie developers just don't get an amazing amount of help through that stuff. And so like we rely on, like an increasing marketing budget, but a marketing budget that doesn't represent even a fraction of a percent of what a lot of these bigger titles and companies do for their games. Like, we have all already heard of Anthem more than anybody else will ever hear of our game. And they haven't even really started their marketing yet because the game's not even out. Like they're like just ramping up. But like that's Electronic Arts, right? It's just kind of so like in terms of hearing us, like it took us a while before we got to the point where we could even justify doing Critical Role because like we really wanted to, and it would be it's great, but and it reaches it's the biggest Dungeons and Dragons streaming audience. Unquestionably, but like we're pretty small. That stuff's expensive, and like making the industry connections possible to make that kind of stuff happen, it takes time. It's kind of just like we've been going through a very sort of organic social media and experience-based approach in terms of trying to build our audience. It'd be a great time to bring Clive on stream to talk about it for 2 hours nonstop in the same monotone voice, but I don't know if everybody can handle it. But like he has a much better idea of it, like because we do traditional marketing approaches. We put ads on platforms and stuff like that. But like honestly, the stuff that works the best for us, for people hearing about us and getting the word out, are our collaborations with the content creators who do Dice Camera Action and other shows. Like we reach our audience better in working with them than we do through marketing.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely say that the getting advertisements, traditional sort of ad purchasing is expensive, and it doesn't always get the return that we're looking for. But if we can, we've actually had a lot more success. We can find people that we can work together with where it's beneficial for both of us to be able to share their stuff in our game, and they can share our game with their community members. Mm-hmm. So I mean that seems to be working well, but and that takes a lot of time to sort of build those relationships
Yeah, I mean there were a lot of people we hadn't connected with until the Stream of Many Eyes last year, which we were at. And yeah, it's just that much more challenging when you're a smaller company. That's really it. Like, Clive will regale us with tales of working at EA when he had like real money marketing budgets, and it just sounds like another universe. It doesn't even make sense. Like, it's just nuts. So, yeah. And on that note, because it's almost 5:02, so we need to start wrapping this up. And so there was a couple more questions from Baron Stromgard and Trills Gaming and Nitslacko. I don't know how to say your name, but we're not going to be able to get to them because I need to wrap this up. Because as it turns out, there's a brand new show coming on in about 5 or 6 minutes about juice. Welch's Game Juice with the amazing Kate Welch hosting is coming up next with their first episode. So I'm going to wrap this up now. That is our show for today, Thursday, January 24th, 2019. Thank you all so much for joining us, for watching, for participating in our community, for asking us questions. You guys are awesome. Awesome. We like you. This show exists because of a number of amazing people behind the scenes. Including my co-producers, Erica and Clive today, as well as our partners at Dungeons & Dragons, Daryl, Allison, Greg, Bart, Pelham, Satine, and of course, Obo Crazy in chat. Huge thanks to Dave for joining me today. The next show coming up on the D&D Twitch is hosted by one of our favorite humans, Kate Welch, and is about juice. It's a new show about juice. At least that's what I have written down. So we're excited to tune in and learn more about juice. And then, of course, after that, there's that tiny show called Critical Role coming on at 7. So have a wonderful weekend, everybody, and thank you for joining us.